You already know the script. Someone dies, and you know exactly what happens next. Black clothes, a room full of flowers, quiet people saying the right words in the wrong tone. It feels ancient, like it has always been done this way, like grief only ever had one shape. It hasn't. The real answer is far stranger and far older than any funeral home could ever tell you. Long before there were caskets, there were caves. Long before there were priests, there were hands, carefully arranging a body in the dirt. And the strangest part isn't that your ancestors buried their dead. The strangest part is how long they went without doing it at all. For most of human history, a body was just left where it fell. No ceremony, no marker, no goodbye. That sounds cold to you now, doesn't it? But death, for hundreds of thousands of years, wasn't a special event. It was just weather. It happened, and the world moved on. Then something changed. In a cave system in northern Spain called Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones, archaeologists found the remains of at least 28 individuals dropped down a 13-meter vertical shaft. These weren't modern humans. They were an earlier hominin population, living around 400,000 years ago. And here's the detail that stopped researchers cold. Among the bones, they found a single stone hand axe made of a bright pink quartzite, a material not found anywhere near the cave. Someone carried it there. Someone chose it. Someone dropped it in with the dead for no practical reason at all. The excavation team, led by paleoanthropologist Juan Luis Arzuaga, nicknamed it Excalibur. Think about that for a second. A tool with no use at the bottom of a pit full of bodies. Not food, not shelter, not a weapon someone needed back, just an object placed with intention beside people who could no longer see it. That is the oldest hint you have of something that isn't burial exactly, but isn't nothing either. It's the first flicker of a species starting to ask what a body means once the person inside it is gone. You'd think the story moves in a straight line from there. It doesn't. Death, it turns out, has never had one meaning. It has always meant something different depending on who was looking at it. Fast forward to the Neanderthals, your closest extinct relatives, and the evidence gets even stranger. In Shanidar Cave, in what is now northern Iraq, archaeologists in the 1950s uncovered a Neanderthal skeleton surrounded by clumps of ancient pollen. The excavator, Ralph Selecki, made a bold claim. He said the pollen meant flowers. Real flowers, deliberately placed on a body by Neanderthals, tens of thousands of years before anyone thought they were capable of anything like sentiment. The idea captured the world's imagination. The flower burial. Proof that even a primitive cousin species grieved, mourned, ritualized. For decades, it was treated almost like folklore. But is it true? More recent excavations, led by Cambridge paleoanthropologist Emma Pomeroy, reopened that same cave and found something the original dig had missed. The body, called Shanidar Zid, had been placed deliberately in a shallow hollow, curled on its side, and covered over relatively soon after death. The flowers may or may not have been intentional. Bees, burrowing animals, wind, all could explain stray pollen ending up in ancient sediment. But the position of the body couldn't be explained by accident. Someone had dug a space for it. Someone had chosen how it would lie. So maybe there were no flowers, but there was still a decision. And a decision made on purpose about what to do with a dead body is where all of this actually begins. Notice what's happening here. The full-blown ceremony you picture, the singing, the flowers, the eulogy, might be a much later invention, layered on top of something far more basic. The oldest instinct wasn't necessarily to honor the dead, it was simply to do something about them, to not just walk away. That instinct alone was already unusual enough. Most animals do not treat their dead as anything more than a corpse to avoid, or, in some cases, to eat. Elephants will linger near the bones of their herd members, touching them with their trunks, returning to the same spot for years. Chimpanzees have been observed carrying dead infants for days, grooming them long after they've stopped moving. But almost no other species digs a hole, shapes it, and places a body inside it with any apparent plan. Which brings you to one of the strangest discoveries in the last decade of human evolution research. In 2013, a team led by paleoanthropologist Lee Berger descended into a nearly inaccessible cave system in South Africa called Rising Star. What they found inside stunned the field. The remains of at least 15 individuals of a previously unknown hominin species, which they named Homo naledi. This species had a brain roughly a third the size of yours. And yet the bodies weren't scattered by predators or washed in by floods. They appeared to have been placed there deliberately, repeatedly over time, in a chamber that would have required climbing through total darkness to reach. Berger's team went further, controversially claiming to have found deliberate markings on cave walls near the remains, hinting at something like symbolic behavior. The claim is still fiercely debated. Many researchers argue the evidence for intentional burial and symbolic marking isn't yet conclusive. But even the possibility rewired a basic assumption that treating your dead with some kind of purpose might not require a large brain, complex language, or anything you'd call culture. It might be older and stranger than intelligence itself. Archaeologist Paul Pettit, who has spent decades studying the origins of human burial, describes this whole span of prehistory as a slow shift, not a sudden invention. First, bodies were simply left. Then, in places, they were moved out of the way into caves or crevices, more out of practicality than sentiment. Then, gradually, something else crept in. Placement, position, objects left alongside. Not because anyone had invented religion yet, but because absence itself had started to feel like it needed a response. By the time you reach the Upper Paleolithic, around 30,000 years ago, the pattern is unmistakable. Bodies buried with red ochre pigment, staining the bones and the surrounding earth a deep, deliberate red. Beads made from shells traded from hundreds of miles away, sewn onto clothing that has long since rotted, found still in the exact position they'd have been worn. Tools placed at hip and hand, as if someone believed, or at least hoped, they might still be needed. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. None of this required writing. None of it required organized religion, or priests, or a concept of heaven. Your ancestors were performing rituals for people who could no longer benefit from them, long before they had any language for what happens after death. Why would a species do that? Some researchers argue it was never really about the dead at all. It was about the living. A shared ritual repeated the same way each time gives a grieving group something to do with its hands and its attention when the world has just proven violently that it doesn't care about you. The ritual isn't a message sent to the deceased. It's a structure built for the people left standing. That reframes everything you do today, doesn't it? The wake, the eulogy, the awkward line of people offering condolences you don't quite know how to receive. None of it is really for the person in the casket. It never was. It's scaffolding for the ones still breathing, built out of habits so old they predate spoken language, refined over hundreds of thousands of years by hominins who had far less to work with than you do, and somehow still felt the pull to do something. You still feel that exact same pull. When you visit a grave you know cannot hear you. When you keep a voicemail from someone who will never call again. When you set a place at the table out of habit before you remember. That isn't sentimentality. That's an inheritance. A behavioral fossil passed down from a pink quartzite hand axe dropped into a pit 400,000 years ago by hands that had no name for what they were doing, only the certainty that leaving was not enough. So, the next time you find yourself standing in black clothes in a quiet room full of flowers, saying the right words in the wrong tone, Remember what you're actually part of. Not a modern invention, not a formality. You are the newest link in the oldest ritual your species ever built, one your ancestors started performing long before they had funerals, because some absences have never known how to be ignored.